Welcome to the Real Freedom Podcast, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Real Freedom Podcast, where we talk about building time and financial freedom through different opportunities in real estate. And, one of the things that people think is folks in the medical field make a lot of money. They maybe don't need to have a side hustle or a side gig. And that's absolutely not true. There's a way to leverage the wealth that you're building to create more wealth. And so today we've got Pranay Parikh here, and he is a physician, co-founder and president of Ascent Equity Group, serial entrepreneur, online course creator, and host of the MD to Entrepreneur podcast. And so his unconventional journey to medicine helped him learn the skills to excel in entrepreneurship. Now he's launched a 7-figure online course and has bought over $1.1 billion in real estate and helps hundreds of physicians launch their own business. And his goal is to help 10,000 physician-led businesses. Where you invest is typically value-add multifamily, Texas, Florida, Oklahoma, Arizona, other states will talk about that. And you're looking at larger buildings, typically 30 million to 100 million, kind of 200 to 400 units. So with that being said, Pranay, thank you so much for coming to the show. We appreciate having you on.
Thank you for the opportunity. Really excited to talk to you.
Why don't you share a little bit about your background? Obviously, the medical piece plays a large part into the niche that you're focusing on. Walk us through kind of how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, so I did the med school thing. I still practice, which is surprises a lot of people. But after I paid off my loans, I tried to figure out what to do with my money, and I wanted something that I had control over, but I also wanted money in my pocket. The most important thing to me was cash flow, because cash flow is king, as they say, but it's how you change your life, right? With cash flow, you pay your mortgage. With cash flow, you pay for your vacations. And that's kind of different than the stocks where, Tesla's going up like crazy, but you're not seeing the benefit of that until you sell.
Right.
You can argue there's dividend stocks, but that increases your tax burden, which, especially living in California, I'm taxed a lot.
Yes.
So I wanted cash flow that was tax deferred, tax beneficial. And really the only way I could do that was through real estate. So, I started with my own properties and just realized I couldn't scale up that way. So that's how I found syndications and passive real estate.
Give us a real quick background about kind of your medical journey.
Yeah. So I was pre-med. I was really wanting to be a doctor since I was young. I probably around 5, or as old as I can remember. And went into pre-med, went into med school, actually in the Caribbean, which is definitely a unique opportunity. And then I went to got residency. I did residency at University of Southern California, so USC. I did residency, and I graduated and started working right away. And that's kind of when I saw the opportunity to do real estate kind of after I graduated. So kind of pretty typical medical career through residency, through medical school and residency.
For those folks that aren't in the medical field, what's kind of the vibe from your coworkers in terms of how many of them are looking for other ways to actively invest their money? Is it something that gets talked about a lot or not, or you're just trying to drum up more interest as you go? But how does that work? They're making a lot of money, and do they talk about what they're doing with it?
Fortunately, it's been a lot more in vogue to talk about money. In medicine, very traditional, and people haven't talked about money, but I think really to our detriment. I think and they don't teach you this in medical school, because there's so much else to learn. But when you take someone that's, a baby financially or financially education wise, and you give them, a 6-figure paycheck, almost always we have a target on our back. So all these whole life insurance, all these other companies that may or may not be a good fit for us will come. And, we're very trusting, have a lot of faith in people, and a lot of people get taken advantage of.
Hmm.
And so I didn't want to be one of those people, but I just didn't know anything. So, it took a lot of reading. There's a lot of great resources by doctors, including ours, to just educate people. And that's kind of our focus, at least initially, before we started a company. But after we educated everyone, they're like, okay, now we want to invest in you guys. And we want you
Mhm.
guys because we trust you after reading all this stuff, after going to your conference, after taking your course. And that's kind of why we started Ascent Equity Group.
And that makes a lot of sense. The trust piece. I actually recently just came off of a webinar where we're talking about working with investors and raising money, and they said it all comes down to trust. And you being in the medical field, working with people in the medical field, there's that natural bond there where they feel like, okay, you're not just going to take my money and run and it's going to be the latest Ponzi scheme that you find in the news. And so you have that common experience with them, and so it's that natural beginning first step of, this is somebody that I can trust, and I know they're not going to run away with my money. They're going to do a good job with it. I heard there's kind of three aspects that investors look for. It's, are you going to run away with my money? Am I going to lose money or kind of be even, or am I actually going to make money? And so, you're moving them to that direction of, yes, I trust this person with my money enough to where I know that I'm going to make money working with you. So kind of talk about your experience as you guys got started and you were building and growing to the investments that you have today.
Yeah, in the starting, we started small. So the model is called a fund of funds. Basically, there's a large deal. I think it was 200 million at the time, and we're a very small piece of it. It was
Hmm.
3 million. It got a foot in the door. We were able to give access to our people because at the time it was 1 million minimum, and we were
Hmm.
able to get everyone in for, I think, 25,000 each. So that was our
Okay.
first foray into it. Then we created a fund. It was actually it was a big jump from 3 million to 10 million. And we were
Hmm.
able to be small pieces of 5 different properties. So kind of instant diversification. And that fund is like up like 30%. It's doing very well.
Hmm.
But after that, we decided that we wanted a seat at the table. We wanted to be able to really partner together with the operators that we work with. So we don't do our own real estate. We Because we're in a fortunate place of being able to bring all this money, we're able to partner with really people that are the best of the best in real estate,
Hmm.
large apartment complexes. So not only do we bring the money, but we bring a lot of expertise. We have a large team. For example, we have an asset manager. It's someone that looks at all the financials, talks to the property manager every week.
Hmm.
And we walk the property every quarter minimum. Sometimes we walk every 2 weeks. So we're able to bring all this value. And not only are we able to kind of cherry pick between operators, but we're
Hmm.
able to pick the best of their deals. And let me give you one quick example. This
Hmm.
last deal that we got, Oklahoma City, as I mentioned earlier, but reason that this deal, and it just closed a couple of weeks ago, the reason that it sparked our interest is because the loan on it was 2.9%
Hmm.
fixed for
Hmm.
9 years
Hmm.
and that's insane already because interest rates are in the sixes now, but
Yep.
also interest only for 4 years. So that loan is just, it would have been great at any time, but now it's amazing. So we're able to be like, yeah, out of all your deals, we want this one. And
Hmm.
they're happy to work with us because we bring a lot of value. And then that value gets transferred to our investors.
Hmm. And those types of deals are the deals that being in real estate, people are looking for in this day and age. Because like you mentioned, right now we've got interest rates that are high. I mean, I've had clients be quoted as high as like 7.5% on investment loans. And so the price is one thing, that the interest rate is now so much more prominent. And if you can find assumable deals or deals where you can keep that interest rate and it's a great rate, that makes the deal a lot more attractive regardless of price, because that interest, the difference between 2.9 and 7.5%, that makes a big difference.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point. It was a loan assumption. So basically, how did we get this loan right now? We got it because the loan was created 4 years ago and we're assuming their loan. But not everyone can qualify. it's a loan from the government, and the government is super strict with who they allow loans.
Hmm.
This is actually our second loan assumption of the year. So
Okay.
we have a great deal flow, and we're able to bring all this stuff. So, this fixed interest rate when everyone else is getting variable rates. You're right. It's hard to kind of think that abstractly. So let me tell you about my house. I bought a house last year,
Hmm.
fortunately. My interest rate was 2.37. So crazy,
Hmm.
right? Great loan. And I looked at it again, and this is at 5.5%. So for the same house, nothing's changed. My mortgage payment would be an extra $3,000 per month. That's at 5.5. It's higher than that now.
Hmm.
So it's almost 1.5 times more. And what do you get? What do you get out of that? You get nothing. That's just money to the bank,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So it materially changes your deal if your interest rate changes.
So for somebody coming into the real estate space, just like your investors have to, eventually know, like, and trust you, how did you figure out walking into this industry brand new, who the people were that you wanted to work with, the relationships that you needed to form? How did that process start for you?
Yeah, we're an overnight success 10 years in the making. So,
Hmm.
our company is 2 years old, fairly young, but we've been in syndications and passive real estate for over 10 years.
Hmm.
And a lot of that is just talking to people. And I find that that's something a lot of times we're lacking, talking to people, but talking to them in person, talking
Hmm.
to other people in the team. Sometimes you talk to the CEO and you're like, this sounds great. And you talk to the associate and you find out all the issues. But
Hmm.
really doing your due diligence. I think in the beginning, a lot of times we would get super excited to work with someone. We would a lot of times trying to triangulate. And this is how, because a lot of times when you're starting, you don't know what you don't know, right? So
Hmm.
we worked with people, and a lot of times we didn't get great deals for ourselves. So a lot of times we didn't make much money because we passed all of our benefits to our investors.
Right.
But if you do the right thing for long enough, your investors will really trust you. But so how how is their reputation? How is their track record? Right. So if you work with some of these bigger companies like we did on our first deal, they're really not going to give you much. And everything that they give you in terms of returns, you're going to have to pass to your investors. But it's a learning experience. We learned a ton from our first deal. And
Mhm.
from our second deal, and by our third deal, we were really hitting the ground running. So if you try to maximize or squeeze out every profit you can in the beginning, it's going to be difficult. No one's going to want to work with you. You got to kind of learn the ropes a little bit. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's why we actually partner with people instead of doing ourselves. Between the three principles, we own a ton of active real estate ourselves. We've done this and we can do this, but it just makes more sense to work with someone that's done 30 plus years of all real estate instead of us who are all three doctors and do real estate as well.
It's interesting because it really is the mindset of 1 + 1 = 3, or, something like that, because you add value to the relationship. And, some of your investors, they could go do it themselves. They're leaning on you and the expertise you have to be able to structure a good deal and put that together. You're leaning on the people that you're working with to put together a good deal. And overall, that's going to make a better product for everybody, because they're going to make more money. They're going to be happier. You're going to do a better job. You're going to have more clients to create bigger deals. And obviously, you're vetting out great people to work with as well. So it really works well to have more people working together versus Joe Doctor that's trying to get into real estate. It's like, oh, I'm going to go buy a flip and do it myself and try to find contractors. Or maybe they try to pick their own syndication or pick their own large multifamily property themselves. It really is a good value of a mix of money and time and expertise.
And I'm sure you know this more than anyone, but if you want to do real estate right, it's a second job. You
Hmm.
have to build out a team property managers, accountants. You have to create an LLC. You have to do marketing. You have to do all of this stuff, and that's just for one
Hmm.
unit. And each unit is its own business. And if you want to do it, if you want to start replacing part of your income, I'm not even saying all of it, part of it, you got to own 10, 20, 50 units, maybe 100. If you're making 100 or 200 per month per property, and you want to have significant cash flow, you're going to have to own a lot. So a lot of doctors, including myself, they start in the beginning, they're like, yeah, real estate's great. How hard can it be? And it's, honestly, it's not that difficult. You can figure it out, especially if you're a doctor, dentist, anyone could really, there's like 18-year-olds that are killing it in real estate. But the question is, do you want to spend the time, effort, and sweat equity to get that happen? Or are you willing to give up a little bit of your returns? We tell people you get 90% of the benefit for about 5% of the work, but it's probably more like 99-1, but I don't want to toot my horn a little bit too much.
So talk a little bit then about investing in a commercial real estate syndication. How does that work? If I'm new to the game, I don't know what it is. First of all, maybe we just quick for those folks that may not know what is a syndication, explain that, and then talk about how folks can get involved.
Yeah, so there's two groups for syndication. There's the general partner, the ones that are kind of structuring the deal and buying it, renovating it, doing all that stuff. And the limited partner. The one good way to think about it is like a stock, like a company stock, right? So Apple's there doing their Apple thing, making iPads, selling expensive iPhones, and you invest in their stock, right? So they get some of that money and they use that money to expand. So you don't really have a say in the day-to-day, right? They just take your money and they give you part of the profits. And that's kind of how syndications work. Just consider it like a company that you get to invest in. The nice thing, just like Apple, investing in Apple, you have zero liability, right? Because Apple shoulders all that. And it's nice. So when you own your own real estate, you're taking some of that liability. Of course, there's ways to minimize that, LLCs, all this stuff, but you are taking some of that liability. On the syndication side, it's nice because all that liability is shouldered by us, so the general partner. So as an investor, your most important thing is to pick the right sponsor. By far, the most important thing. Find the right sponsor. Once you find a couple of those, a couple of them you can trust, then you can ask them to. Then you can start looking at their deals because you've already done most of the legwork. I'd say 70-80% of the legwork by finding the right team, right? And that's just the sponsor. They'll find everything else. You just find the group. They'll find the property manager, the accountant, the lawyer, all that stuff. You just find the group. And then you look at the deal and make sure that the deal itself, the way it's structured, makes sense. So, for example, sometimes people will have really high fees, and fees get charged before any of your returns. So, that isn't very investor friendly. So I find, and a lot of people will focus on the deal itself. They'll look at the market and all that stuff. But if I have a good sponsor and the deal structure looks sense, most of it makes sense. Most of these deals are in Florida. The markets are great, population growth. Like they're pretty good at that. It'd be kind of hard to pick a wrong one, right? Because they're really real estate experts. But the first two are what I really focus on: the team, the sponsor or operator in our sense, and then make sure that the way the deal is structured isn't super focused on their side, right? Because remember, as a investor, you're taking a good amount of risk because you don't have control. So you should get compensated for that risk.
Yeah. And how do people find sponsors? I can't just go, I can't just go to the yellow pages and be like, okay, I'm going to call a few of these. So how does that work?
Yeah. And this is funny for people that take our course, they're like, I've never seen a sponsor. I promise you, with a little bit of effort, you're going to find so many sponsors because we're out there looking for you.
Absolutely.
We're looking for you. We want to talk to you. If you don't know anyone, now you guys know me. So feel free to reach out to me. And we'll have my contact info in the show notes. But it's just ask around, right? Find out. So I'm known as the real estate guy at every hospital I work at. Talk to others. There's no doubt a ton of doctors or dentists or wherever you are that are investing in real estate, and ask them how do they do? How are they distributing on time? Are they sending their returns? Are they doing well in communications? Would they invest with them again? So it's pretty easy. So a lot of times it's trying to find other people. And that's the other thing, you're listening to a podcast like this, and find other listeners, right? Build a community. And I like to tell people that investing is a team sport. A lot of people try to do it individually, but it's best done as a team.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Yeah. I mean, there's local real estate investor meetups. There's Facebook groups that you can join. I think that's a great way to kind of lean in, start conversations with more people. Cause maybe you're really interested and yeah, you've listened to some podcasts, but you don't know anybody in your friend group or in your connections. And so I think, yeah, local meetups, Facebook groups, that sort of thing is a great way to get started. And then don't be afraid to ask, what are you doing? Who do you know? How can we work together? Because that's another thing that I love about the real estate space is people want to help each other, whether it's connecting them. If I don't know the answer, I want to connect you to somebody that does know the answer. And if I can't help you personally with an investment, maybe there's a better option out there. And so people do want to help each other. You just have to kind of reach out and ask. And if you're somebody that's maybe a little bit more shy and introverted, you got to lean in, ask some questions, go meet some people. It's out there. And on the investor side, I can tell you, ask any person looking to raise money in real estate if they could use more money, the answer is going to be yes. So they're out there. We just got to go partner up and find each other.
Yeah. And just one small point. Remember, don't invest in the first group you meet. Or at least right away, right? Make sure you do your due diligence. Sometimes it's easy to get excited, even with us. I tell a lot of doctors will come to us. They're like, we trust you because you're a doctor and this other stuff. I was like, still do the due diligence. Just because you've known me and you've read my blog posts, listened to my podcast for years, but still, like, at least get on the phone, talk to me, find out my track record and all that. Hold us to the same standard. Actually, hold us to a higher standard. This is what I tell a lot of doctors. Your shields are probably down a little bit because I am a doctor, but if anything, you should hold us to a higher standard, and we want to be held to that higher standard.
And talk through some of the success stories that you've seen with some of the doctors that you've worked with, where from a financial freedom standpoint, where now I used to just have my job and now I have, this amount of money coming in, this type of cash flow. Like you had mentioned at the beginning, the cash flow piece is what's really important here. You're investing your earnings to create cash flow, but share some success stories or some good examples of how that's paid off for folks in the past.
Yeah. And a caveat, you're not going to make six figures right away, right off the bat. It's an investment, and it's an investment over time. So usually the type of way that these deals are structured, there's something called a preferred return, which means every dollar that comes returns wise actually goes to you first, depending on that percentage. So say we give 10%. So if you put in 100,000, and that means we owe you 10,000 or 10% per year until the deal closes. So, that's pretty significant, but that is not cash flow, because if it was cash flow, why would you wonder, why is this property cash flowing right away? Like, are you guys even doing anything? It usually cash flow is like 4, 5, 6%. And the preferred return accrues. That means I owe you to you next year. So if I give you 5% in year one, I owe you 15% in year two, and so on. So I think a pretty safe estimation is, you can say, about a 5% return every year. So if you put in 100%, 100,000, you get 5%, 5,000, right? So not life-changing money, but you can change, maybe pick up a couple left shifts. But when it gets really powerful is when the property sells. Usually, so say in 3 to 5 years, it'll be 1.8x, 1.8 to 2x your money, right? So 100 turns into 200. And say you're investing 50 to 100 every year, starting year 3 to 5, now you're doubling your money. You could put in more money. You're paying very minimal in taxes. So, you don't get the benefit of it right away, but in a couple of years, it starts looking very juicy, and you're able to, an extra $80,000 a year. That can pretty much significantly change anyone's life. And you can decide, what I do is I take a little bit out, enjoy my life, and put the rest in. So then, if you're going from 50 to 100 invested in a year, maybe once you get some money back, maybe you're doing 150 to 200, and you're just, able to really grow that. And, in 10 years, that is 5 to 10 years, depending on how the market is, you're really almost able to replace your whole salary.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then the one quick thing is, remember, this is tax deferred. So yeah, even though it's, 5,000 to 10,000 in your first year, that is the equivalent of a lot more because you're not really paying taxes on it immediately.
Talk a little bit about the markets. And you had mentioned, I had rattled off at the beginning, Texas, Florida, Arizona, Oklahoma. Where are you looking? What types of deal are you looking for? And why is it so attractive for your investor partners?
The biggest thing we look at right now is downside protection. We've been focusing on this for years, but it's even more important right now. So
Mm-hmm.
we want to make sure not to lose any money. So, stock market's down 30%, crypto's down like 90%.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we make sure, even if we get a 0% return where your money's stable, that's a win when everything
Mm-hmm.
else is down 30%. But so we look at doomsday scenarios, right? If interest rates go up tremendously, which they have, rents are flat, like, are we still able to make returns? And, usually we're still able to
Mm-hmm.
project a 5 to 10% IRR return, which is pretty
Mm-hmm.
good. So one of the reasons that we like those states is because there's no state tax. So when the downsides in investing in real estate in another state, you got to pay state taxes for those returns. And if you're investing in somewhere like Florida or Texas, you don't have to pay that. So that's a, couple percent added to your
Mm-hmm.
return because you're not paying state taxes. And a lot of doctors hate anything that complicates their taxes because our taxes are kind of complicated already.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we focus on those places. There's also a lot of job growth. There's a lot of population growth, and that's something that we think is important for the health of the property.
Talk to me a little bit about, you want to help physicians build and launch businesses, side hustles, why it's important to do that. Share with us a little bit more about that piece.
Yeah. So I have a podcast, From MD to Entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
where we teach doctors really the tools and resources and really the inspiration as well to launch a business. And you might have heard that there's really an epidemic of moral injury or burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Medicine is really changing. It's a lot more administrative. We don't get to spend as much time with patients as we'd like. We have to
Mm-hmm.
see a lot more.
Yep.
So a lot of people are making either a binary decision. They're working their butt off and having this moral injury, or they're retiring and we're losing that experience, intelligence, that
Mm.
skill. And
Yep.
it's unfortunate, it's even happening to some younger doctors and they're switching to something else. So I think there's a spectrum. There's a certain amount of shifts that you work or hours that you work, which is healthy for you. And I don't think it's full time for pretty much anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And but that needs financial security. You need to have money coming in from somewhere to support yourself, right? Just like all of us.
Right.
So some people do real estate, but other people like to do something that's uses the other side of the brain. So for me, it's podcasting, it's real estate. Other people are writers. Other people do coaching. So I want to give people the skills because a lot of times we've gone through medicine, but we've really been focused on nothing else but medicine. And maybe either just even when we had other skills, they're kind of rusty now. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
helping people give a chance and spark that inspiration. And, if we've seen anything over the past 2 years, that more physician-led businesses would just make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because having an outlet is important, and also what makes somebody successful in medicine is work ethic, determination, don't want to give up. They see the bigger picture, right? You're willing to take on all these expenses and all these loans because you see the payoff at the end. So you're the delayed gratification piece. There's so many great qualities there that they can also move in another direction. I like what you said too, in terms of having a different outlet, like a creative outlet, like a podcast. It's relief and yet it's still work at the same time, but it's a different part of the brain that you're using, and still using all those ingrained skills that you have and all those quality traits you're just using in a different space. So I love that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just It's right. It's a creative output. And even though it's more work, right? It is more work.
Mhm.
It feels different and it doesn't feel like work. And even if it's a hobby, I don't monetize my podcast yet. And
Mhm.
potentially never will. But it's something that gives me some release, and like a way to make a larger impact than just myself.
I've heard that from a lot of podcasters. You really have to enjoy podcasting for the joy of podcasting, meeting people, making great relationships, that sort of thing. And yeah, if you monetize it down the road and you make money, that's icing on the cake. But to set out to do it to monetize, might be a challenge, or it might just take a lot longer than you think to be successful. So that's why I continue to do it. I just love these types of relationships, meeting new people, learning new things. I love to learn, and so each episode, it's a whole new space that I'm learning. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's getting a master class in being able to speak to an expert, which normally you'd never get a chance to. So I love it too.
What does the future hold for you? Where are you guys looking to grow in the future? What are maybe some goals or ideas that you have moving forward?
Yeah, we touch only very 0.001% of doctors. We see doctors invest in bad investments all the time. So our
Mhm.
goal is to just get more out there. And that's kind of why, one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast, just to let people know. And, we want people to make good investments. They work really
Mhm.
hard for their money. And even if that investment is with other people, I've invested with a bunch of other groups, including ours and other groups. So as long as people are getting into good investments, I'm happy. But
Mhm.
a lot of that is trying to educate people and making sure that they know what a good investment is.
So you're helping people with their money, you're helping people to build other businesses, side hustles. That's awesome. And obviously you guys are really successful in what you're doing with the funds that you have and the assets that you guys are managing. So congratulations on the success. Like you said, I love it. A overnight success story that took 10 years, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
For anybody that wants to learn more, you mentioned the podcast, but how can people find out more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah. So if they want to reach out to me, if they want to talk anything about real estate, my email, Pranay, Pranay at ascentequitygroup.com. Our website is ascentequitygroup.com. There's a way to sign up for our newsletter. You'll get a bunch of educational resources that we've created to get you from not knowing anything about real estate to be feeling pretty confident, at least about all the terminology and all that stuff. So it's all on our website. And yeah, if you're interested in entrepreneurship, from MD to entrepreneur podcast, you could get it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pranay. We're so excited to have you on the show, and just a wealth of great information. So thanks so much for sharing.
Thanks for the opportunity.